Hello, and I'm live now. And I did want to see if I could actually share this um, video with my group, but do you know, I cannot see how I even do that. Let me just, nah, I forget that. Technology just ain't my thing. So I wanted to, I was inspired this morning to come and share with you a little bit more about the monsters under the bed and why it is so important that we don't ignore them, and why it is that you actually can't afford to do that anymore. Because I know I've written a few posts, and sometimes people will see the posts and sometimes they don't, and sometimes it's like, I can't be bothered to read that. So I thought I'd hop on a live and see if I could explain a little bit more. So what are the monsters under the bed? Well, some people refer to them as their shadow self. So they are parts of us that have formed from our early informative experiences in life. And the monsters stay under our bed as a result of the experiences that we've had in childhood, but have maybe ignored and squashed down, and just basically just like, I don't want to even go there. And let's talk a bit more open about this. What I'm talking about is the monsters under the bed. They come around as a result of our exposure to childhood trauma. And I want to clarify here what I mean by trauma, because a lot of people, a lot of clients that I've actually worked with sort of say, well, I resonate with what you're saying, but actually I've never, I haven't experienced any childhood trauma. What I'm talking about is trauma through the eyes of your child self. And yes, there is the big trauma, they call it the big T and the little t. So the big T is the big trauma stuff like abuse, violence, death, chronic illness, those things, accidents, those things are big T trauma. And the little t trauma is things like, you know, stuff that you wouldn't normally think of as traumatic. So I've had a number of clients who, as very, very young children, had very serious illnesses which resulted in going into hospital, and they're like, well, that's not really traumatic, so I don't know why I've got this block showing up in my life. But the reality is, those kind of experiences as a child, as a baby, you're separated from your parents, you don't know what's going on, all you know is that you're feeling really bad, and suddenly you're in this strange place with strange smells all around you. Well, through the eyes of your child self, I can guarantee that was pretty damn traumatic. So one of the monsters that may have lodged itself under the bed as a result of that trauma might be fear or anxiety. So the monsters come about as a result of our exposure to traumatic experiences in our childhood. And they stay there unless we are willing to look them in the face and address them and release them. And so often clients, people, me, I spent years ignoring them. I actually did not want to acknowledge that they even existed. So I had experienced childhood abuse, and I didn't really have that many memories of it. And as I was moving into early adulthood, I kept having these kind of flashbacks of scenes of this abuse that was taking part. And I remember sort of having these flashes of images come to my mind, and I would just say, whoa, what's that? Ugh, that's disgusting. Why would I even think of something like that? That didn't happen. Squash that back down, get back under the bed. And this carried on for years. And the problem is, when you keep squashing those monsters under the bed, it's like anything. When you keep squashing it down, eventually it's going to want to spill out, and it might just kind of explode in a really big way. Now, for me, it was with a rather splendid psychotic episode. It was, I say splendid, it was like falling apart big style. And I ended up in a psychiatric unit. And from that point, it's been a very slow journey of recovery, 17 years. But so many people that I talk to don't want to address those monsters. They don't want to go back into the childhood trauma. And I can understand that, I really can. But let me just give you an example. So I was chatting with someone who'd watched my webinar the other day. So I do, one of my signature talks is called From Survival to Thrival. And I'd adapted it a little bit from the talk that I delivered at the Best You Expo. So I'd added a little bit in to explain about the monsters under the bed. And my webinar really spoke to her, because she had everything on paper that she had been wanting to achieve. So she worked in a really high-powered job, was earning a really decent income. She reached all her financial goals. She'd reached all her career goals. On paper, she said, I should be thriving in my life. And there was a but. So I asked her, what's that but? Why? What is stopping you from thriving in your life? And she said, I'm just so riddled with self-doubt and these feelings of not being good enough, and how that's showing up in my life is that every day I feel so stressed, and I'm always kind of blowing my gasket at work and just feeling aggressive, and I want more confidence and I want more grace in my life. And we were chatting, and I was exploring a little bit and asking her, you know, what have you done so far to help yourself? And she said, well, I meditate every day, I journal every day, I exercise, I do yoga, I'm really conscious about what food I put into my body, and yet I still feel like I am on this knife edge, always tense and stressed out and tired and exhausted. And she said, and this has been going on for so long. And she said, and as a result of it, because she said, whenever she sets herself goals and she achieves them, and she's still left with these feelings of self-doubt and not feeling good enough, she said, what's been happening over the years is that her dreams have got smaller, her goals have got smaller. And I just felt in that moment that she was just kind of getting smaller and shrinking back. And how incredibly sad is that? You know, it just goes to show that, you know, you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't address some of those core issues, if you don't let those monsters out from under your bed, you're just not going to have those feelings of peacefulness and gracefulness and contentedness. So I asked her this question: when was the first time that you ever felt not good enough? And she said, you know, I remember, I know exactly where that came from. she said it was from childhood trauma. And I shared with her, and I said, well, I'm not going to ask you the details of that now. It wouldn't be appropriate in such a short space of time. I don't want to open up these wounds, you know, when we've only got a few minutes to talk about, you know, what you might do next. But can I ask what you have done to deal with the childhood trauma? And she said, oh, well, you know, I've shared with you that I meditate and I do breathing exercises and I do yoga and I go running and I watch my diet. And I asked her, but have you actually addressed the childhood trauma? And she said, no, I don't want to go there. I don't want to open up this can of worms. And I understand it. I really do, because when I was going through my recovery after this massive psychotic episode, which ended up in a psychiatric unit, part of my treatment was you know, linking with a counsellor on a weekly basis, and it was fucking painful. Going into those sessions every week, it was a little bit like, you know, you go in, you rip off the sticky plaster that's covering this massive septic and festering wound, and it's like you rip off this plaster, you dig in there and you go in there, and it's really painful and it's raw and it's sore and it hurts, and then the counsellor says, time's up, sticky plaster back over. But you know what happens whenever you put a sticky plaster over an open wound? It doesn't stop hurting, does it? And you're left with all this pain, and you're left with this rawness that you're just walking around with. So I get that people don't want to deal with that childhood trauma stuff, because it is fucking painful. But, and here's the but, through my journey, my own personal journey of recovery, I have found so many different ways of addressing that raw, painful childhood trauma, which doesn't actually re-traumatize you. So you're not having to dig open this stuff and just walk around like this open, festering wound all the time. The techniques that I have learned for myself and that I share with other people actually help you to contain all that rawness, contain the pain. It helps you to release it, and it helps you to replace some of the pain with other lovely feelings. So you start to feel free. You start to feel love and acceptance for yourself. And there are many different ways that I do it. I work in combination using coaching and emotional freedom technique. Emotional freedom technique is one of my most favorite luscious techniques there is, because it really does help to reduce that emotional intensity, and it happens very, very quickly. But the other things that I teach or share with the clients that I work with is around creating that powerful mindset routine, because it's not like, you know, you can work with me for 3 months or 6 months or even a year and everything's healed and cured and you'll never experience any of these difficult emotions again. It's a daily practice to notice when the monsters under the bed are vying for attention, and to address them there and then in a really passionate, in a really compassionate, loving way, so that the monsters start to feel relaxed, and so that you start to feel like you are more in control of your life as well. I just want to check the notes that I wrote earlier, because I'm not sure if I've covered everything. Yes, so I think the final point that I wanted to make was, you know, if it is so painful to really deal with childhood trauma. Why bother? Why even go there? Why not be like this person I spoke to the other day who is managing to keep a lid on the stress? Well, here's the thing. You can, of course, choose not to address the really deep traumatic stuff from your past, the stuff that is keeping those monsters well and truly hidden. You can always choose to ignore it. You can continue the way that you are, living this half-life, living a life where you don't quite ever feel like you've reached happiness, where you give up with your dreams and your goals, because even when you set those dreams and goals, it never makes you feel free, never makes you feel that confident or fulfilled. You can choose that, of course you can. But if you choose that, I hate to be the one to say it, those monsters will find a way of coming out. And if you continue to ignore them, they will come out in ways that can be quite destructive and catastrophic. Like when I had that psychotic breakdown. For other people, it comes out in forms of chronic illness or complete and utter burnout. And I don't want that for you, because I know that the techniques that I use, it's not just the coaching, it's not just the emotional freedom technique, because I actually tune into spirit, I tune into guidance from angels, I tune into the intuition and channeling from the universe, from spirit, whatever you want to call it, so that when I'm tuning in and working with my clients, I'm bringing so much more than just these techniques of coaching and emotional freedom technique. And the shifts don't always happen straight away, but the energy in which I'm working with does have an amazing impact on the people that I work with, so that they feel this lightness, they start to feel like there is light at the end of the tunnel, that there is hope, and they start to take control back of their lives. And one of the clients that I worked with earlier this year, when she came to me, she was so incredibly anxious. Anxiety just kind of ruled her waking life. I was going to say her sleeping life, but the reality was she wasn't actually having much sleep at all. And what she wanted from us working together was to see a significant reduction in, well, actually she didn't want to feel anxious anymore. But she'd only signed up to work with me for a month. At that time, I was just offering monthly packages. And I thought, wow, that's quite a tall order. Quite a tall order, given that in 1 month we need to unpack all of the traumatic experiences that she's had from her childhood and release them energetically and get her into a mindset routine. And well, you know what? We reduced that anxiety by 80% in just 1 month. That is phenomenal, isn't it? And even I was a little bit taken aback. But it was a really valuable experience for me to see that it takes a lot more than working with me one-to-one for just 1 month, because I only work with clients who are really brave enough to go deep, to really face those monsters, to be brave, to have that dialogue with them, to find out and explore exactly what is going on. And you can't do that in one session. You can't do that in 1 month. You can't even do it in 3 months. In 3 months, we can start the process. And then what? Because I always offer as a starter 3 months, and then after that, you just see where you're at. Because sometimes people need to go away and work on themselves and recalibrate a bit before they come back to work on another layer. So I think that's all I wanted to share. Just this honesty with you, that I understand why it is you want to keep those monsters squashed under the bed. I really do get it. But just be aware and know that if you don't allow them out into the open, if you don't allow those monsters to have a voice, if you keep the shame, the anger, the frustration, the guilt, the fear, the sadness, if you keep that all squashed under your bed, if you keep those experiences from childhood squashed down, they will find a way of coming out and exploding and messing up your life big style. And I don't want that for you. I really don't. So find a way. And it might be that I'm not the right person to help you. There might be someone else. You will know exactly the right person who is put on your path to help you work through this trauma. And all I would say to you is, when you feel that calling, when you feel that right person calling you, when you feel that stirring, that little bit of, is this something I need to address right now? Follow that feeling. Trust. That is your inner self. That is your soul. That is your soul calling you. That is your soul saying, I want you to heal because you deserve to be healed. And just trust that the person you are drawn to work with is exactly the right person for you. So like I said, I only work with people who are really brave enough to face those monsters under the bed, who are brave enough to go there, to face their childhood trauma, to release it, to let it go, to set themselves free. If that's you and you want to explore exactly how we're going to work together, how long it's going to be, send me a private message. Let's get working together. Let's bring those monsters out from under the bed. Let's befriend them. Let's give them some love and compassion and get you feeling freer, happier, and full of grace. Thank you for watching. Bye.